if I would say. And so since 2020, we've been working to support the SMEs. A couple of interventions, some very significant that we all know about. I can, on top of my head, mention the CAP bus. And I know most of you, in fact, 90% of you here should know about the CAP bus. It's the Coronavirus Alleviation Business Support Scheme, which was rolled out in 2020, 2021. It was a direct financial assistance to SMEs across the country. And we have more than 700,000 people or businesses benefiting from this intervention. We mostly talk about access to finance as a major challenge with SMEs in Ghana. That is true. I would not dispute that fact. But over the years, what we have witnessed at GEA is that the major problem, or another major problem, has to do with business management and basic financial literacy skills, basic entrepreneurship skills. So we have a lot of enterprises, we have a lot of SMEs, we have a lot of interventions that we as an organization are rolling out. However, you notice that an SME comes to you and says, I need access, I need finance to grow my business. And so what we call the 360 business diagnostics. And we realize that the problem in the business is not really about finance. It's about how they manage their own capital and their own finances. And so since we noticed that our intervention has always come with some form of intervention that is not only finance. If you go to a bank to look for any capital, they will look at your books, your records, your sales, your purchases, and those things. But our SMEs do not keep proper records. And so our intervention has extended or now transcends just giving financing to providing the training, the soft skills that they need to manage their capital, and also to prepare them for access to finance when they go to seek for those funding. We have collaborated with the Japan International Corporation, JICA. We've collaborated with GIZ. We've collaborated with UNDP to scale up and to really bring the SMEs to a point where they are able to walk to the bank with all the records that they need to be able to access finance. Just to wrap up, I would just say that indeed, finance is a big challenge for SMEs. But from our perspective, there are a lot more that the SMEs can do to access the finance and not just walk into the bank and say, I run a business, I need access to finance. That will not work, and that has not worked over the years. Thank you.
All right. So my name is Honorable Atta Issa. I'm a member of Parliament for Sanargu, member of the Finance Committee of Parliament, Trade Committee, and then board member at Ghana Airport Company Limited. It is a privilege to be here this afternoon. Let me begin by saying that the issue of SME financing remains a critical issue as the IMF, at their fifth review, identified a huge financing gap in SMEs in Ghana. In fact, there is about 15 billion Ghana cedis financing deficit for SMEs in Ghana. Currently, all of us know the difficulties that we are currently facing with regards to security sector recruitments, because public sector is not the viable option to recruiting our young folks. To that end, the efforts of government is trying to de-risk most projects to make it bankable enough for private sector and SMEs in general. I will say that Ghana still has a very shallow financial market, and it is not peculiar to Ghana. It's an African problem. If you read the report that was done by Hosman in 2009, he categorically stated that for Africa to grow, we need to have a very deep financial market where lending rates drops drastically for people to be able to access funds. But nothing much has really been seen since the report was issued in 2009, except to say that government upon government keep bringing one way or the other policies that are mostly fragmented and not coordinated by anything. So to that end, I will say that this is a critical topic that we need to look at, access to SMEs financing in Ghana. If you look at the 2025 report that was presented by the Minister of Finance, there is a report that says that about access to private sector investment increased by 19%. But when you go through the list of beneficiaries to those funds, they are mostly large firms. So it tells you that the funds really do not trickle down to the various SMEs, and they keep on struggling in the micro business trap. So mostly SMEs keep on struggling with as a baby. They don't know how to grow up. But I will say that previous governments, including this government, have also always brought in short-term measures that do not structurally address the issue. For example, if you look at Maslog, for example, the idea of Maslog was to provide soft and short-term loans for firms to expand and create jobs and add value to our economy. However, due to politicization, chronism, lack of coordinated effort from the other agencies, we see that Maslog has rather been turned into a political machine. As a politician, I can tell you a lot of times that people in our constituencies go and access Maslog funds. It is believed that once it is government, it's free. So go and look at their non-performing assets. It's always higher. In fact, the last report in 2024 was almost 69% non-performing. They dole out the money in small quantities, but they are unable to retrieve that. So during the IMF debt statistician report with the Ministry of Finance, it was encouraged that we do an asset recovery unit at the Maslog office. But you and I know that because of excessive partisanship, we may not be able to achieve that in the short to medium term. So that is a problem. My brother talked about the Ghana Enterprise Agency, and I think it's the same problem we have at the Ghana Enterprise Agency. The targeting is always poor. It is not done by any needs assessment, to my candid opinion, because my place, we are benefiting. In fact, on Thursday, we'll be benefiting from your support in my constituency. But a lot of times, the lists we give you mostly are not based on needs assessment. So you don't tend to build business people, you build party bases. And I think that is what we need to move away from if we want to develop. Then the third one I will say is that Development Finance Ghana. The concept of Development Finance Ghana was engineered to make sure that we do proper bankable investments so that we analyze business portfolios and give financing when necessary to fill in our industrial deficit. However, because of the concept that SMEs are mostly risky, they still require a lot of guarantees and collateral. That limits access to finance to the SMEs. So currently, what is before the Parliament of Ghana under the New Banking Act amendment that we seek to do is to make sure that government introduce risk guarantees so that the private sector can leverage on that to access funds at cheaper rates. Then, the most significant one, I will say, was the Youth Enterprise Support, currently which is called the National Entrepreneurship and Innovation Plan. Ideologically well thought through, but also falls short in the times of implementation. So I think generally the whole thing has to do with a coordinated effort with a single objective. The idea is, what is the SME outcome? Is that not the point? When you look at the data, the output, and look at the several billions we throw in through these schemes, you realize that we still have a lot of work to do. But that is not to suggest that there is no hope. I believe that financing to the SMEs can grow, because looking at the current fiscal regimes that we have, government cutting taxes, consistency in policy over the last 2 years, and then even the monetary and financial performance in terms of the policy rate cuts and all those things, make borrowing much cheaper than they were before. And I think that there is still hope for us to do, but I believe that we are working on something to make sure that SME financing is encouraged and given to them.
My name is Daniel Afo, the CEO of Somra Farms. Somra Farm is agribusiness, and actually our specialization is oil palm plantation. Even though we have other crops, which maybe later I will talk about, but we have developed an oil palm plantation of 1,500 acres in Bruno Ahafo region. And that makes us the biggest oil palm plantation farmer in Bruno Ahafo region. And then when it comes to Ghana, apart from the big companies, Top, GOPD, and Bob, we are ranking 5th in oil palm plantation in Ghana. And it's a private liability company run by Ghanaians. What I want to say is that Somra Farm actually started from a classroom. And it was one lecturer who actually destroyed my life when I was in school. Because when he was teaching, he told us, and at that time was Cape Coast University, he said that we don't finish university and go and look for job, but we finish university and go and create jobs. And for me, it was like a bomb. What are you saying? So after finishing school, you are telling me I shouldn't go and look for a job, but I should rather create a job. And it sank inside me. Why? Because my parents were farmers. And I myself, I also grew up from a farming community. So I thought that, okay, now I have finished university. I'm going to look for a job. So it means I'm going to my parents to ask them to give me an opportunity to work in the farm. But on the other hand, I realized that I know better than my parents. So what the lecturer said was for me a very challenging thing. So when I finished university, which was 1991, I decided to do my national service, which I did. And when I finished, I said that I'm not going to work again. I'm going to work. I want to create jobs. So I went to my parents, and they gave me 3 acres of land. I started with it. I worked on it, and I planted oil palm plantation. And today, I have 1,500 of oil palm plantation. I haven't worked in any institution, apart from the national service that I did. For me, I don't have any records anymore. My records is that I'm a farmer, and now I'm the oil palm plantation for the biggest in Bruno Ahafo and the 5th in Ghana. Right. It's something that I want to talk about, and I'm very happy that I'm not a politician. Else, tomorrow they will take you up. Actually, you don't need a capital to start a business. Your concept means you need a capital, but you need only an idea. Why? Because when I began farming, of course, there was no capital, and to go to commercial banks to ask for money, they will refuse you. So I decided to develop a system whereby I can pay myself, pay my workers, and expand my farm. Maybe time will not allow me to talk about it, but I did it. It was an innovation. And when we talk about innovation, a typical Ghanaian business is something coming from above, but it's simple thing that you can put together. And at the end, you'll be able to move. And that is exactly what I did. So if there is any bank in Ghana who will ever raise up his hand and say that Somra Farm has ever borrowed money from me, you will never find any bank. Because we decided to develop a system to pay ourselves and expand our farm. It's a special thing that one day maybe we have to talk about it. But we have grown from 3 acres to 1,500 acres oil palm plantation. It was only last year that we said that, listen, we have created a raw material base. Now we want to process it into finished product. Because most of the challenges of most people is that within 2 minutes, they will go and buy a machine. We are going to process this. And when you ask them, what is your raw material? I'll buy it. But at the end, you have money, but you can never even find the raw material. So there are so many industries which are so locked up. But we said that no, we are going to build a raw material base. So after we finished, we consulted Impact Capital, and we said that, listen, we want to buy oil mill, build a machine so that we can process our raw material into finished product. First time, they give us 800 million Ghana cedis. That was last year. And within 2 months, I'm talking about May, we are going to commission it. And it's going to be the first oil mill factory in Bono Ahafo region. Now, all right, that's okay. So, venture capital trust fund. So, what do I mean? By next 2 months, when the factory is commissioned, the raw material is already what? There. We are going to run the factory probably 3 shifts. So the 24 hours economy, we have actually initiated it already. But it's planning. You can never walk into your future. It's not possible. You have to create it. So we started building our future by expanding our farm from 3 acres, little by little. Now we have got a future. So if this commission is done, we are ready to go. And if tomorrow our investors say that they need their money to pay back, it's nothing for us. It's a strategy. And I still believe that in the future, if we say that we even need more money to expand the business, there won't be any question about it. Because we have established our foundation. And that is the nature of farming that we are doing. And you'll be surprised that now some of our workers are in universities. After vacation, they come. And what I've seen is that farming is something that you have to be able to groom people so that they will grow, they will have appetite for it. Else, you can bring people to university, to polytechnic, and after the graduation, you say, go to farm. And not that they don't appreciate it, but they don't have the zeal and the power to go. So I'm grooming them. Now they are in university, after vacation, they come back. And I know some are 27 years, 25, 30 years, and I know in the future they will take over. Already I'm 63 years, but I have imparted the generations from what I know. So that is the nature of the business we are doing. And I thank the venture capital. I think later I'm going to review what we are doing detail by details. Now that we are even, the EPA came to us when we were building our factory because we need all the permits. And they asked us, where are you going to deposit your waste material? I said, what kind of waste material are you talking about? We don't have waste material. Why? Because after processing the fruit, from there the nut will go to palm kernel, we'll also process it to palm kernel oil. The shells, I don't want to say this one here, but I will just, don't behave as if you haven't heard it. We have gone to an extent to process our shells into activated carbon that we can use to purify gold, to treat water, to treat all the water, Ghana waterways, all those chlorine and all those chemicals to purify the water. We have got the results. Not from anywhere, from the shells. From the shells. So after extracting our palm oil, the nut is going to another palm kernel machine to extract the palm kernel oil. the shares, we throw it away everywhere. Our parents, everywhere, because nobody wants it. But we have turned it into activated carbon. Samples are there, but don't go and tell anybody. That we can use it to purify gold. Mineral Commission is importing millions.
So I'll come to you for more details.
Okay.
Let's listen to Ms. Ajimfra.
That's okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I'm Deborah Mausa Ajimfra, Deputy Director General Legal for the Securities and Exchange Commission. I don't expect clapping. When regulators talk, they don't get clapping, so I'm not...
Can we give her a round of applause, please?
I don't expect clapping. I'm surprised that I'm the only woman on the panel, since SMEs have about 44% female leadership. I was expecting that representation would reflect, but as it is, I'll just continue. So what does the Securities and Exchange Commission do in this space? We don't deal directly with SMEs, but we deal with the intermediaries that support the SMEs. So you wouldn't see the SEC giving money directly, but we have the laws, we have the regulations, we have the policies that help the intermediaries give the SMEs the needed support. So I'll just highlight a few of them. I'm happy to see some of our fund managers in the room, like Injaro is here. I don't know if Savannah is here. So what we do is that we license these intermediaries. And before they get the license, we take them through a rigorous process of making sure that they have the right documentation, the right people to lead. And I will just highlight one of the practical ways I saw an SME function through the license we gave to Injaro. So I was in Tamale to see Tama and the way that they were working on the share butter and the things they were doing. At a point, they were in your space, but I know now they've exited. So that's an example of what we do. I know Chigaba, that's how it's pronounced, is launching their fund tomorrow. Savannah Impact is a licensee of the SEC. So that is how you see practical ways. There's Grow For Me, which is a crowdfunding platform that is licensed by us to support SMEs in the agribusiness space. So these are just a few of the entities that we license. And you also see the SEC behind the Ghana Stock Exchange has an alternative market, which is the GAX, which is supposed to help SMEs with less stringent processes, even support, because this morning we found out that one of the hindrances is that the people in the SME space are not they don't have enough information. They don't have the technical know-how. So the GAX is actually supposed to help these SMEs, prepare them, give them some assistance to be able to list on the alternative market. We also have the Ghana Commodity Exchange, which is purely also for agri-commodities, where the SEC has licensed the Ghana Commodities Exchange. And as we've licensed them, they are able to help the SMEs in the agri space to be able to also put themselves together, provide warehouses for them, help support aggregators. And all this is because the Ghana Commodities Exchange has a license from the SEC. Our fund managers, coming to our fund managers who got really burnt in the process of lending money to SMEs. So we had fund managers that got very toxic portfolios from lending to SMEs. And so our fund managers actually are shying away from lending to SMEs. But how can we help that process? Because that's a space that needs funding. So what the SEC has done is to license credit rating agencies. So now in Ghana, we have our own credit rating agencies. So these SMEs can actually get rated. And once you get rated and you go to these fund managers, I believe that you'll be looked at favorably because you've put in some processes in place to be able to do this. So that's something. So from the intermediaries, fund managers are now being encouraged to go back to the SME space with an investment guideline. One thing they didn't do well is that they overexposed themselves to the SME space. So with the investment guideline, now they have restrictions on what percentage they can put in the SME space through commercial papers. And as we speak now, there are several fund managers in court with people they gave commercial paper funding to, and they never paid. They've even have rulings, but they are not able to enforce them. So with the investment guideline, we are hoping that at this point in time, before a fund manager goes into the SME space, they would have followed the investment process. Their portfolio will be diversified enough to manage the risk in that space. So the SEC is supporting all these different intermediaries to make sure that the SMEs get access to funding. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Honorable, you unpacked a lot of things for us. So let me start with you. And because we are running short of time, maybe we'll keep the answers a little shorter. Now, you talked about the fragmented nature of government intervention. You did introduce the big elephant in the room, which is politics. And I'm glad it's coming from a politician. Because you can actually digest why it becomes that way. I remember when the Venture Capital Trust Fund Act was passed, for the first time, the politicians in Ghana agreed. This one, we want to keep our hands off it. Let the private sector lead. That's why venture capital does its investment through the fund managers, as Mrs. Agribusiness has said. But, all the things you talked about, if you were to, talk about how we can better design programs, let me just read that. How can government better design programs that can attract, no, sorry, not that one. Where have programs fallen short? You've talked about it. What reforms are urgently needed in the design of these programs so that they would have the intended effect? How can we reform these programs? We've talked about MASLOC, we've talked about GEA, there's venture capital, there's DBG, and I'm sure when you go to the Ministry of Trade, there are a number of programs. The perception that it is government money, it is free. How do we run away from this? You already are on the finance committee. What are some of the things you guys are doing to ensure that new programs do not have these shortcomings?
All right. So let me begin by saying that government should not be seen to be intervening so much into production, first of all. So I believe that there should be some level of policy consistency and trust. You see, if a particular government brings an initiative that is good, a mere change in the regime should not be an end to that policy. And I'll give you an example. We had 1D, 1F with the policy objectives and goals. A change of government came, that was abandoned. Whatever the reasons are, I think that if you are building a nation, we need to have some harmonization in goals to say that we need to grow the industrial base of this country. A 3-week war, you see how we are exposed as a country. That tells us that we must diversify as far as possible to be able to withstand all exposures that confronts the nation. So I think policy consistency for me is very important. We have to look beyond partisanship, excessive one. The second thing I would say is that government should shift away from just giving policy incentives and rather invest so much in bankable projects for the private sector. Policy of always tax cuts does not drive investments. A mere tax cut does not drive investment. De-risking investment portfolio for private sector is the way forward for me. So I think we need to shift away from just doling out tax incentives and other incentive packages and invest more through bankable projects. The third one I would say is that there's a conundrum between startups and scale-up gap. Most government programs are geared towards startups, but we are unable to look at scale-ups. And I think that's where venture capital can also fail in with development finance or development bank finance. We must be interested in the growth stage of business. Every business has a life cycle. You don't just start up a business through government support and you abandon the business halfway. I think that is also a problem that we must look at as a country. Then the fourth one also, which is quite important for me, is that we must be looking at the broad market-based approach with concrete linkages. I'm happy the way he spoke. The idea for him is not just the production of the oil palm, but he is moving ahead with processing. And then using even the byproducts to create another value. I think that we have to target properly with a well-coordinated value chain methodologies. I'm particularly happy and excited to be witnessing the progress of the 24-hour economy. It is very important if we understand the brain behind the concept. Creating value addition in this country has been on the table since Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. Post-1958, we haven't had a government that starts from agriculture to feed industries, and then the industries provide services. Service sector is supposed to be a support service to the industrial base. We are rather doing the reverse economic metrics, where the service sector rather creates industry and the industry rather creates agriculture. That is a reverse model in any classical economic framework. I think that the 24-hour economy will help us a lot in exploring the agriculture base of this country. And SMEs, please watch out the space for agribusiness. That is the new direction the government is planning to spend huge sums of money in order to create value in this country. And then the last one, PPP is the way forward for me. There are still challenges with regards to input cost in production by SMEs. We have issues with cost of electricity, cost of water. We have infrastructure deficit in terms of roads, transport, and the rest. And then we have basic difficulties with digital tools. How can government partner the private sector to provide these services without burdening the taxpayer? I think that is the way forward. In fact, there's a new literature that was just done at the last annual meeting of the IMF where they stated that countries ought to leverage on long-term financing of the country through pension funds and other funds to create economies that is self-financing in itself. We are talking about the Accra Expressway to Kumasi. How can we create value out of that? By making sure that that does not become a liability on the books of government, but we do it in collaboration with the private sector, because that route in itself is self-financing. If you've been to any part of Europe, you realize that there are roads that are express, and you pay before you use those roads. Those are self-financing mechanisms governments use to sponsor or finance long-term or highly costly investments. So I'm thinking that issues of energy, transport, and those things, government should invite the private sector. Recently, Nigeria issued an infrastructure bond. And the idea was to develop some airports and some roads and railways so that private sector contribute capital. And when those investments come to fruition, those finance itself. Lastly, where I work at Ghana Airport Company, we have introduced the airport development levy. And the idea is that we are developing new regional airports, Sinyani, and then Y and Bolga. And the idea is that all the projects that come, the passenger service fees are used to finance those projects. So private person brings capital now, then the outcome of those projects are used to defray the cost of the private person, so that it doesn't become a liability on the books of Ghana and create physical rigidities so that we cannot satisfy any social and safety net programs. To that end, I think PPP is important for me. So that's what I would say.
Thank you very much, Honorable. Can we have a round of applause? Yes. Now, I have only 8 minutes. I don't know if Angel, where is Angel? He's not here, so we can go on and on. I mean, the conversations are getting interesting. And because it was lunchtime, people didn't come in early, so maybe we have a little latitude. CEO of IIGH is here. If we can have a little, because I want the audience also to have a bite of the questions. So if you have a burning question, let me throw it out there now. I have a few that I want to throw it out, but I want to listen. If anybody has a burning question they want to ask, we can treat that now. Yes.
Thank you very much. My name is Julius Lamte with Impact Investing Ghana, and I lead the Ghana Research and Industry Collaborative. So my question goes to Mr. Afuro, the CEO of Sumera Farms. I want to know to what extent did research and innovation support helped you to improve the work that you're doing, given the end-to-end approach of making good use of the resources, the palm product. So how did you go about the innovation process? Did you get any support elsewhere? And what was the lesson in there for us to replicate?
Thank you very much. I think when it comes to support, I made mention that it was only last year or last 2 years that I approached Impact Venture Capital for support. And at that time, I only went there because I needed a support to build oil mill or processing center. And that one involved a lot of money. And that cash, I was not at. So that was the time I went there. But before then, I've been working, expanding the farm. I have 73 permanent workers, casuals about 80. They have to be paid every month. But I think that is where your question is. How did I manage it? And that is why I said that if somebody tells you that I have 1,000 acres of oil palm plantation, it means that the person is using only 15% of the land. The 75% is just a waste. So this is what I did. For every palm that you grow, it takes about minimum 5 years to 6 years to close up. So in between, there are other crops that you can plant. Perennial crops, which may be 3 months, vegetables that can also, within 3 months, you can harvest and generate what? Money. So I resorted into that. That now, the oil palm, it will take me another 6 years for me to generate money. But since the land is there, I can also do mixed farming, intercropping. And I mean, as I'm talking now, I only talk about oil palm plantation. But don't forget that I have not less than 60,000 plantain trees, or plantain, call it trees, so that you can see that it's plantain. Sockets, you see, I don't talk about because they give me a lot of income. If at the end of the month, I have to even harvest 1,000 plantain trees, take it to be trees. For me, I'm a farmer. I can sell it a bunch, 50 Ghana cedis. But here in Accra, I know a bunch will cost you 150. But for me, 50 cedis times 1,000, you know how much money that I can get from it. So I can pay my workers, I can expand my farm, I can do whatever that I want to do. I have cassava. They are all being grown on the same piece of land because it will take some years for the palm. So all these casual crops give me a lot of income. And I use it as a basis to expand my farm, to pay my workers until we reach this level of 1,500 acres of oil palm plantation, whereby I want to add value. So at this time, it's capital intensive. And that's why I cannot generate 800 million. It's not possible. So I consulted the farm managers, and they came, they saw that what? Such a project, all that you need is what? Machines. They are willing to give. Because if the machine is fixed tomorrow, the same tomorrow I'll start processing. So whatever money that they have invested, they are sure that they will get it back. And I'm not panicked because I can pay that money within the shortest possible time if I want to. Of course, they gave me 7 years to pay, but I can pay it within 2 years. But I want to work with them for the future development. So I said, okay.
So we won't get it in 2 years. Bring it so we give it to somebody who also need it.
You see,
but thank you very much. I think that the time is running. So I want to ask GEA, and maybe to everybody, what would it take for us sitting here? I'm Venture Capital Trust Fund. It is government intervention. GEA, government. As for securities industry, they will always be here, whether we like it or yes. But in 10 years' time, if there was any problem that you don't want to hear about again, what would that problem be, and what would it take for us to get away from it? And we are talking in context, government intervention for SMEs, financing. I think Honorable has unpacked a lot of things for us, de-risking, partnership, PPE, and other innovative ways of actually generating money between government and people. But from GEA's perspective, what would it take that in 10 years' time, your intervention will be considered, this time around, we don't need it because now the SMEs are flourishing? What would it take? Very briefly. We don't have much.
Thank you. Yeah. So I'm very happy about some of the issues that Honorable raised. I've known him to be a fearless person. And for some of the things he says, it's not that we don't know them. We know them, but I can't say. He's a politician. It's surprising that he's able to bring some of them up. As I mentioned earlier, as an agency, we know the challenges that SMEs go through. We also know the challenges that we face in trying to implement some of these policies. The politicization and the interference is there. We are trying to move beyond this. So to your question, in 10 years' time, our goal is that when you visit an SME, they are fully digitalized, their books are in order, they are able to show you records of their transaction, so that if they want to access funding, they just approach any funding institution or funding organization and they're able to access. What we are doing is trying to really move away from the complaints, because majority of our MSMEs, mostly we talk about the SMEs and leave the micros out, is that they are not formalized. And so our goal, which is part of almost all the programs that we are running, is to try and bring them in the formal bracket so that they are able to register for ORC, register for taxes, register for all the government approved licensing that they are supposed to get, so that when they approach an institution for funding, it becomes easy for them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you very much. Honorable, I'll come to you last. Mr. Ajimfra, what would it take? I know securities industry is doing a lot of things. Regulatory reform that affects fund managers that are giving money to SMEs. What would it take for us to create that environment where SMEs are comfortable, flourishing? And in 10 years, we are not talking about access to finance, cost of finance, and difficulty with accessing finance. What would it take from the SEC point of view to get to that point?
I think we're reviewing our act now, and it's been shared with stakeholders to give an input. And I believe that SMEs are stakeholders, the intermediaries are stakeholders. They should all make an input into this act. So when it's passed, it will be something that can be used to develop the sector. And what I expect is that these SMEs will not always be SMEs. We should be talking in 10 years' time about how an SME became a fully listed company on the Ghana Stock Exchange and is doing very well. So that's the expectation we have, that they will not always be small, tiny, but they would grow and leave that space for other small companies to also come. So that's what we look forward to.
And be a little favorable to the fund managers when they come. They are here, so they... Honorable, last words. What would it take from the government side, from Parliament, from your committee? What would it take in 10 years' time? SMEs are flourishing. We are no longer talking about the challenges, access to finance. We're talking innovation, technology, and we are moving forward. What would it take?
So what I would suggest is that it will take us, like I said earlier, to shift away from just the incentive to look at more bankable projects. The second thing is, I said earlier, which is applies a policy consistency. The businesses need to have some level of certainty and predictability for them to plan. So if there is some level of consistency in policy rates, the forex rules, and all those things. It allows them time to plan. Then the third one I would say also is that we have to institutionalize the Development Bank Ghana properly to meet local value creation so that financing gets to indeed the business people, not necessarily because of lineages and political affiliations. And then the third one is also that we have to, as much as possible, combat corruption in our public space. Often, the economic benefits or social benefit we get out of government policies to private sector is eroded completely because of corruption. So I think we need to tackle that.
Thank you very much. And let's have a round of applause for our panelists. One more thing, Angel. I think he said we need to resource, and he mentioned development. What he meant was venture capital trust fund. Let us not, we are the ones sponsoring it. What he meant is resource venture capital trust fund so that they continue to do their good job. On that note, I want to thank you all for listening. Angel has already stopped me.